Alright, YouTube, David Harry here, and in this video I'm going to do a very specific test to see if the power modes on the M1 Max will have any bearing or any effect on the output rendering speeds when I export H.265 from DaVinci Resolve. Now, this particular video has been inspired by a question asked of me on the Blackmagic DaVinci forums by a user called Andrew Kolakowski. Now, Andrew, I'm really sorry if I've just mispronounced your surname. I didn't mean to if I have done. Now, what it is, Andrew had asked a very good question on my previous video, and that was I in high powered mode when I did the speed test? Well, the answer to that is no, I wasn't. I was in auto. However, I think that the question that Andrew was asked actually warrants a video to test as to whether or not these power modes may affect this particular test, hence the video. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is just show you that the power mode that I'm in right now, I'm on battery and I'm in low power. Also, just for good measure, I've switched the power adapter mode to low power. Now, despite the fact I'm not on the power adapter, as we can see up here with the battery, there's no indication to say it's charging. Oh, by the way, that's on 94%, so a lot of power to do this particular test. The reason why I've changed the power adapter also is just in case there might be any weirdness with these settings. As we all know, computers can be a bit odd, so that's the only reason why I've put both of them on the same setting. Okay, so back to Resolve here. Now I've got this 8K section of the timeline in an 8K project ready to export. So what I'm going to do here, I'm just going to render it out and just explain a few things. So there's a lot of stuff going on here to do with the settings and whatnot for this particular project, the source codecs and stuff like that, and also like the settings for the encoder. However, I don't have the time to get into that right now because I've already done it in another video. For anybody who's interested in all that kind of like granular detail, there'll be a link on the screen right now at the end of this video and in the description below, taking to another video which will actually show you all of these settings that are used. This is a replication of the previous video that I've done, however very specific to the power usage. Now what I'm going to do is just speed through this until we get to the end, and let's see the time taken to do this particular export. Okay, so now that we've got to the end of that actually took 1 minute and 23 seconds to do. Also, I would say there was an average there of about 43 frames per second as it was going through. Now what I'm going to do is go back to the power adapter settings here, the battery settings. I'll do the power adapter as well, like I've already explained for good measure. So these are now going to both go to automatic. Once again, let me explain to people, it is not necessary to change the power adapter. I'm just doing it for good measure. And on that point, another thing that I'm going to do for good measure is to close down Resolve and reopen it, just in case there might be any weirdness, which means that you have to restart programs in order for like these battery settings to take effect. Not that these should, but once again, we all know how weird computer systems can be. So let me just speed through this cycling of Resolve. Okay, so we're back now to do the auto version. So let me just get straight into render here. All right, so we know exactly what I'm doing now. So what I'm going to do is just speed through this bit and let's see what we come to at the end as far as the time taken. Okay, so there we are then. That is 100% complete, and we've got the exact same time of 1 minute and 23 seconds. Also as well, it goes without saying that the average frame rate for the encode would have been the same, which was hovering around 43. So once again, I'm just going to kind of not power down, I'm just going to switch Resolve down, change the power setting, switch back up and do all that stuff again. Okay, so here we are then, we're in high power mode. In fact, let me just confirm that again. So there we go, high power on the battery and high power on the power adapter. Let me just hit the render straight away. So once again, same render and everything else, nothing's changed other than the battery power settings. So what I'm going to do now is just speed through this until we get to the end of this one. Okay, so there we go, and once again that only took 1 minute and 23 seconds. So between low, auto and high, as far as the power modes were concerned, we got the exact same reading there. Now, there is a good reason why that's the case, because some people might be sitting there going, well, hold on a minute, you've gone from low up to high. We should be seeing a huge difference between those settings or between those results. Well, the thing is, no, and I think I know why. What it is right now, and the reason why I didn't have like any kind of like, power monitors open or anything like that, is because the Mac isn't actually being taxed that much, to be honest. In fact, the fans haven't switched on, and you can't see that my position here, but my microphone is directly over my head pointing down at the Mac itself, and I can guarantee you can't hear any noise coming off the Mac. So what's happening here, what I'm asking it to do within the timeline, right, is as in like, prepare the buffer for the video. That isn't taxing the Mac enough for it to even break into a sweat where it would need to throw its fans on to cool down or anything. Now, don't forget, the render engine has like fixed resources. So the render engine will only be able to go to a maximum regardless. Now, the only time that the render engine would start like rendering slower is if the video being fed to it wasn't in real time or wasn't as fast as the render engine can actually handle at its highest encode numbers, as it were, or its encode speed. So right now, because the Mac is capable of doing everything in real time without breaking into a sweat, the render engine is actually being maxed out. So what we're seeing here is the render engine obviously can do 43 frames per second on average when doing 8K to 8K with these particular settings and setup. And that is the reason why I think we are not seeing any difference here. And that's because high power mode or not, the Mac is already hitting maximum for what it needs to do this particular job. Now, here's what I think would happen though. If this was a complex timeline that was being edited and then exported, and let's just say within that timeline you had elements in there which required the higher power settings in order to, say, for instance, maintain real-time ability and such, or indeed you may have just completely overpowered the timeline and you need to drop back to a, say, a low resolution output for preview. At that point, going to high power will definitely give you some advantages because it is going to allow it to open up more to utilize the power that it needs within maybe the CPU or the GPU cores. And then at that point, we would probably then see differences in those export numbers, because although we can clearly see that when it is not being stressed, an average of 43 frames per second in this particular setup is probably what the render engine can do. If it wasn't being fed this stuff, even in high power mode, by the actual, the buffer system, then at that point, the render engine can only go as high on its encodes as what it is being fed. So in that instance, we would probably see the numbers drop, and then we would see the difference between low, auto, and high quite possibly. That is probably, do you know what, I've just talked myself into another test, haven't I? Okay, look, at some point what I'm going to do something that completely swamps the timeline, and then we'll try this again. However, all that I've just said there is why I think these numbers are exactly the same. We've basically just hit the limit of what the render engine can do, and the Mac itself isn't being stressed to do any more than it needs to do what it has to do with what's in the timeline. Anyways, there we have it then, YouTube. That's my answer. All right, anyway, well, thank you very much for Andrew for asking that question, because it did get my brain ticking over at the time, and now I know it doesn't make any difference for this particular test. Anyways, listen, if you've liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. Also as well, consider subscribing to my channel and getting on the bell notification icon. Now, just quickly, I'm in the process, and I have been for a while now, from migrating from Windows and my previous NLE over onto Mac and to Resolve. So So during this journey of mine, which hopefully isn't going to be too painful and doesn't take forever to do, yeah, I'm going to be kind of like learning a lot to do with Resolve and the setup for the Mac and various things like that. So as I'm doing these things, I'll kind of like, you know, I'll kind of like go through my progress as it were as I'm doing it through video form on YouTube. And there might be certain things in there that might be interesting to people. Just to be clear, I am not a noob either as far as video is concerned. I've been doing video post-production now for almost 30 years, you know, so I know a lot about it. It's just that I don't normally use Macs and I've never used Resolve before until recently. So like I say, my journey is not one as a noob, as it, well, I'm a noob to Resolve, but not to video post-production. Anyways, I'm David Harry. Thank you very much for watching this video. Take care and goodbye now.